All right, let's talk about this one. Every now and then, Family Guy just gets a wild hair up its butt and decides to tackle something absolutely insane. And this season premiere? Yeah, it's one of those. Seth MacFarlane, bless his weird little heart, often feels like he's just making whatever's bouncing around in his head that week. And sometimes, just sometimes, it connects in the most bizarre ways. Like with this episode, where the whole thing kicks off with Lois getting LASIK surgery, and then, well, things go downhill faster than Peter on a slip and slide. Seriously, the premise alone is something else. A simple eye surgery turns into a whole new life of blindness for Lois, and then the show just runs with it in a direction that, let's just say, is aggressively Family Guy. I mean, they even rope in Tom York from Radiohead for a cameo, and honestly, it's less about the music and more about the sheer absurdity of seeing him talk about eye surgery. It's the kind of thing that makes you question your life choices for watching this show, but also, you can't look away. And just when you think it can't get weirder, they pivot hard into Lois trying to capitalize on her blindness with a whole brand called ICU, and it's all capped off with a team-up with an Eminem parody that's something else. This episode dives headfirst into the messy, the uncomfortable, and the downright ridiculous, and honestly, that's what we're here for, right? But stick around, because the way this whole blindness as a brand thing plays out and the completely unhinged choices made might just be the most bonkers thing this show has ever attempted. It's a ride, folks, a bumpy, questionable, and ultimately unforgettable ride. Now, before we dive headfirst into the insanity of Lois Griffin becoming a blind business mogul, you gotta make sure you're subscribed. Seriously, if you're watching this, you're probably as committed to the pure, unadulterated chaos of Family Guy as I am. And hitting that subscribe button is like, well, it's like getting a lollipop from the Sackler family. It's a small comfort that lets you know you're part of something bigger, even if that something is deeply questionable. Don't miss out on any of our deep dives into the weirdness. So, this episode, Season 20, Episode 1. They open it up with the classic Family Guy theme song, which, let's be real, is basically a siren song for anyone who enjoys their humor delivered with a side of existential dread and pop culture references. It's the signal that things are about to get weird, and this episode definitely delivers. On the surface, it's about Lois Griffin, who, after a minor incident involving Peter and a kid named Doug that feels like a classic Family Guy, oops, we broke something scenario, decides to get LASIK surgery. Seems simple enough, right? A quick fix for better vision, a common procedure. But in Quahog, nothing is ever that simple, because the surgery goes spectacularly wrong, and Lois wakes up blind. And this is where the episode really takes a sharp left turn into absurd. Instead of a poignant story about adaptation and overcoming challenges, which, let's be honest, would be a bit too sentimental for this show, they decide to run with the idea of Lois leveraging her newfound blindness for profit. The core of the episode becomes Lois's desperate attempt to turn her blindness into a brand, a business empire called ICU. It's a pretty dark premise, playing on the idea that even a disability can be commodified in our hyper-capitalist society. She starts making these YouTube videos, and they blow up, because apparently people are really drawn to the drama of a wealthy white woman suddenly becoming disabled and then trying to profit from it. It's a commentary, I guess? A really, really twisted one. The episode also tries to juggle a B-plot involving Peter and the kids being forced to build a treehouse for Doug's family as a sort of settlement, which is classic Family Guy filler, but it serves its purpose to keep the main characters occupied while Lois goes off the rails. The writing in this episode is, well, it's Family Guy. Some jokes land perfectly, sharp and unexpected, while others feel like they're grasping at straws, trying too hard to be edgy or shocking. The pacing can be a bit all over the place. One minute you're watching Lois have a moment of genuine despair, the next you're laughing at a ridiculous visual gag involving Tom York or a parody of a current streaming service. It's a show that rarely commits to a single tone, and this episode is no exception. It's a mix of dark social commentary, surreal humor, and just plain old Family Guy absurdity. Visually, it's standard Family Guy fare. The animation is what you'd expect, clean and functional, but not groundbreaking. The direction is competent, but it doesn't really elevate the material beyond what the jokes and the script are doing. The strength of this episode, like many Family Guy episodes, lies squarely in the writing and the voice acting, and the sheer audacity of the premise. It's an episode that's going to be divisive. Some people will find it hilarious and thought-provoking, others will find it offensive and pointless. My personal verdict? It's a pretty solid, if uncomfortably cynical, episode that captures the show's signature blend of humor and darkness. And ultimately, it's a memorable, if slightly unsettling, start to the season. It's got that classic Family Guy energy, where they're not afraid to push buttons, and this episode definitely pushes quite a few. Let's talk about that opening moment, the one that sets the whole messy ball rolling, Lois and the LASIK surgery. It starts innocently enough, right? She's getting a routine procedure. Peter's there, being Peter, probably making some dumb joke about needing glasses to see her bad decisions. But the real catalyst, the thing that spirals this whole episode into the chaos that it becomes, is that initial accident. We see Doug's mom, who apparently just got out of rehab, drop him off at school. And then, bam! Peter, in his infinite grace, hits the kid. And it's not just a little bump, it's a full-on cartoony thud that makes Lois's blood run cold. The immediate reaction from Lois is pure panic. She's like, please be a dog, please be a dog, which, knowing the show, is a very valid fear. Imagine the paperwork if it was a dog. But no, it's Doug. And the kid, bless his heart, is still conscious enough to have a little moment of pain and confusion. And then, the cherry on top of this disaster sundae, he's wearing Elsa underwear. Because of course he is. It's the little details, folks. This moment, this single awful accident, is the inciting incident that will shatter Lois's world and launch her into a new, bizarre reality. It's expertly set up, not for sympathy, but for the ensuing ridiculousness that the Griffin family always seems to stumble into. It's the perfect blend of relatable mishap and pure, unadulterated cartoon mayhem. Then you have the fallout of the Doug incident. Doug's mom shows up, and she's not messing around. She's retained a lawyer, which is hilarious in itself because this is the Griffins, who probably have a permanent retainer on a shady lawyer named Slick Phil or something. But she's serious. She wants to make this up, but not with an apology. Oh no, she wants tickets to see Lana Del Rey with their former nanny, Jessica, and she's 24. And then the kicker, her settlement demand is for Peter and the family to build a treehouse for Doug. A treehouse. Because apparently, a minor concussion and some Elsa underwear warrants a full-blown construction project. Lois, in her typical exasperated mom mode, agrees. She's desperate to avoid a lawsuit. And honestly, who can blame her? Imagine dealing with lawyers over a kid hitting another kid. It's the kind of mundane adult problem that Family Guy loves to blow out of proportion. This scene perfectly captures the show's ability to take a simple conflict and twist it into something completely outlandish. The demand for concert tickets from a 24-year-old nanny as part of a settlement, it's so specific, so bizarre, it's brilliant. It highlights how ridiculous these interactions can get when money and legal threats are involved, especially with this particular family. Following the treehouse agreement, we get a truly awkward scene where the four men sit around while Lois gives Doug's mom a tour of their house. This is where the far-sighted diagnosis comes in. Lois, trying to be polite, describes what she sees on the walls. A cow in a lab coat, vultures in cowboy hats, a dog trying to trick a cat into a clothes dryer. These are clearly just random, weird drawings, and Doug's mom, with a completely straight face, declares Lois is farsighted. Now, I don't know if farsighted is a real diagnosis or just something they made up for the show, but the implication is clear. Lois has bad eyesight. It's presented as this terrible revelation, as if she's been diagnosed with the plague. The absurdity of diagnosing someone based on their interpretation of bizarre art in a child's bedroom is peak Family Guy. It's the kind of observational humor that comes from taking a common social situation, visiting someone's house, making small talk, and injecting it with complete lunacy. The tension is palpable, not because of any real threat, but because Lois is so clearly uncomfortable and trying to navigate this bizarre social interaction. It's a masterclass in awkward comedy. And this far-sighted diagnosis is the direct catalyst for the LASIK surgery plot. Doug's mom suggests glasses or LASIK, and Lois, wanting to prove she's not far-sighted, agrees to the surgery. Then comes the Tom York cameo, which is just classic Family Guy. They get this iconic, notoriously private musician to appear in a video to explain LASIK. And he's not just explaining it, he's doing it in his signature melancholy, slightly unsettling way, comparing it to the veganism of elective surgery. It's so perfectly in character for him, and yet so utterly out of left field for Family Guy. The bit about him being blind in one eye and asking the audience to guess which one? Pure gold. It's the kind of celebrity cameo that feels both completely random and somehow perfectly fitting for the show's brand of surreal humor. The writing here is on fire, using Tom York's persona to amplify the absurdity of the situation, making the decision to undergo surgery feel even more momentous and, ultimately, disastrous. It's a testament to the show's ability to pull off these unexpected, off-kilter moments that leave you thinking, how did this even happen? The surgery itself and its immediate aftermath is where things truly go off the rails. Lois wakes up and the doctor, Dr. Hartman of course, delivers the news with his usual deadpan delivery. The surgery was a success, but by that, he means the hospital accepted her Discover card and they'll get a tiny percentage back. Because of course. Then the bombshell. Lois is blind. Completely blind. And Peter's reaction? It's pure Peter. He's more concerned about the fact that she can't see him and if she can still see the stove and laundry. It's selfish, it's oblivious, and it's hilarious. And then there's Chris, who's already sussed out that Lois is blind and tries to warn Peter about the balloon. The whole scene where Peter is hiding the helium balloon from Lois, whispering to her about it, and then accidentally inhaling helium and having to pretend everything is normal, it's a masterclass in physical comedy and character-based humor. The contrast between Lois's shock and Peter's utter lack of empathy, coupled with Chris's well-meaning but clumsy attempts to cover for his dad, makes this segment unforgettable. It's the kind of scene that defines what Family Guy does best, taking a serious situation and injecting it with the most inappropriate, gut-bustingly funny reactions. The revelation that Lois is blind throws the Griffin household into immediate chaos. Peter and Chris, instead of being supportive, are more concerned with their own petty dramas and secrets. Peter's immediate reaction isn't about his wife's health, but about his own ability to get away with things, like huffing helium. And Chris's awkward attempt to cover for him, while well-intentioned, just adds to the absurdity. Dr. Hartman, of course, completely deflects blame, chalking it up to take your cat to work day and a stray mouse. It's such a classic Family Guy deflection, blaming something completely unrelated and nonsensical. Then he lays out the new reality for the family. They'll have to take care of Lois.
Feed her, bathe her, drive her. It's the mundane reality of disability, presented in the most unglamorous way possible. And then, in a twist that's both funny and a bit sad, Peter and Chris quickly abandon Lois, leaving her to fend for herself while they go off to play with a balloon. It's a stark illustration of their characters, selfish, irresponsible, and completely lacking in empathy when it comes to anything that inconveniences them. The sheer speed with which they ditch her is both shocking and, in the context of this show, perfectly in character. Meanwhile, the treehouse subplot is also unfolding. Peter and the boys are tasked with building Doug's treehouse. Peter, ever the procrastinator, gives them a list of demands from Doug's dad, which are ridiculously specific and infantilizing. Teach Doug to ride a bike, bake cookies, and listen to his Archer impression. This is where the show really starts to lean into the idea that the Griffins are being taken advantage of, but in a way that's also absurdly mundane. The Archer impression, by the way, is spot on, delivered with that signature blend of arrogance and incompetence. It's a funny callback to Archer, and a good way to show the boys' begrudging participation in this whole ordeal. The scene where Chris confronts Doug's dad about the list, and Doug's dad essentially tells him to screw off and threatens to sue again, is another classic Family Guy moment of conflict and petty revenge. It's this constant push and pull, this cycle of apologies, demands, and threats that drives so much of the show's humor. The episode then pivots to the truly bizarre turn, Lois's ICU brand. After her initial despair, she decides to channel her blindness into something productive, or at least profitable. She starts making YouTube videos, and they go viral. The premise is that she's sharing her experience of being unseen, of feeling invisible, and the internet, in its infinite wisdom, latches onto it. She's suddenly a motivational speaker, an influencer, all because she can't see. It's a deeply cynical take on modern influencer culture, where even the most unfortunate circumstances can be turned into a brand. The writing here is sharp, dissecting the performative nature of online empathy and the commodification of personal struggle. The idea that a viral video can solve all your problems, or at least make you rich, is a commentary on our society that feels both timely and a little bit depressing. It's a testament to the show's writers that they can take something as serious as blindness and turn it into a vehicle for social satire, however dark.
The appearance of Tom York again, this time to comment on the future of sight and technology, is another wonderfully surreal moment. He's talking about computers seeing for us, and then suddenly shifts into singing as Casey Kasem. It's the kind of non sequitur that makes you laugh out loud, even if you have no idea why it's happening. It's pure, unadulterated Family Guy weirdness. And then the punchline to the LASIK surgery. Lois's blindness turns out to be temporary, a result of some sort of eye drop or something. The fact that she could have just gotten drops instead of surgery, or that the surgery's blindness was reversible, makes the whole ordeal even more ridiculous. She gained a whole brand, a whole career, from something that was ultimately a temporary inconvenience. It's a perfect encapsulation of the show's cynicism. Even tragedy can be a stepping stone to success. The episode then takes a sharp turn into the truly wild with the Blindflix parody. It's a streaming service for blind people, and the show they're watching is something about Chris Evans and Vanessa Hudgens having racially nuanced babies in space. It's a jab at the self-important, often performative nature of modern television and streaming services, and the way they try to cater to every demographic. The explicit nature of the show, the moaning and the suggestive dialogue, is classic Family Guy pushing boundaries. It's the kind of thing that makes you uncomfortable and laugh at the same time. It's also a clever way to satirize the media landscape and our obsession with celebrity and reproduction. The writers are clearly having a field day with this, and it's one of the more memorable, if gratuitous, moments of the episode. Lois's blindness, or perceived blindness, becomes a huge business opportunity. She launches ICU fashion, ICU skincare, and even partners with a parody of Eminem for an Eminem colonic partnership. This is where the show really goes for the jugular, satirizing the relentless pursuit of profit by any means necessary. The Eminem parody is particularly inspired, with the tagline, "It promises to clear out 8 miles of mom's spaghetti." It's disgusting, it's hilarious, and it's exactly the kind of boundary-pushing humor Family Guy is known for. The episode then takes a turn when Lois's vision starts to return, but she decides to pretend she's still blind to protect her lucrative brand. This is the moral core of the episode, if you can call it that, the ultimate corruption of the American dream, where even a disability can be exploited for personal gain.
The fact that she's willing to perpetuate a lie for money shows the depths of her ambition and the show's cynical view of success. Meg's role in all this is, as usual, to be the downtrodden, overlooked character. She's the one who's genuinely helpless and worthless, experiencing that 24/7. Her attempt to connect with Lois over their shared feelings of worthlessness is heartbreakingly real, even if it's delivered in a Family Guy context. Her suggestion of posting empowerment videos on YouTube is ironic, given Lois's own subsequent success with her ICU brand. It highlights the idea that even the most desperate individuals can find a way to be seen, even if it's through manufactured personas and commercialized struggles. Meg's character often serves as a tragicomic mirror to the rest of the family's more outlandish endeavors, grounding the absurdity in a relatable sense of despair. The scene where Lois is pretending to be blind and Peter is lying about doing laundry and losing weight is gold. He's on the spin bike trying to fake a sweat, and Lois, despite her supposed blindness, can tell something's up. It's a subtle hint that her blindness might not be as permanent as she's letting on, and Peter's not exactly the most convincing liar. The fact that she's questioning his weight loss after he probably made a huge deal about it is a classic marital spat fodder. It adds another layer of deception to the already complicated situation, showing that even within the Griffin family, there's a constant battle of appearances and lies. This domestic squabbling, set against the backdrop of Lois's booming brand, perfectly encapsulates the show's ability to blend personal drama with broader social commentary. The episode's climax, if you can call it that, involves Lois getting invited onto a daytime talk show. She meets with Helen Disingenuous, a parody of a beloved but secretly loathed talk show host who wants to capitalize on Lois's story. Lois sees this as her ticket to true global fame, and the idea of going to Hollywood, even if it's just Burbank, gets her all excited. This is the ultimate validation of her ICU brand, the moment where her manufactured persona breaks through into the mainstream. Meg, as usual, is tasked with making the arrangements, but she's clearly overshadowed by Lois's ambition. The episode ends with Lois embracing her manufactured fame, despite the obvious deception. It's a cynical conclusion that suggests that in the world of celebrity and business, authenticity is secondary to marketability, and that sometimes a good story, even a fabricated one, is all you need.
It's a classic Family Guy ending. No real lesson learned, no true redemption, just the continuation of the characters' flawed lives. Now, about that treehouse ordeal. The Griffins are basically stuck building this thing for Doug's family because of Peter's initial screw-up. The list of demands from Doug's dad is just getting more and more ridiculous, including an Archer impression. And honestly, hearing Chris do it,
it's surprisingly good. It's that moment where you're like, okay, maybe this is worth it. But then Peter's just done. He's had it. He tells Doug's dad to sue them, because what are they going to do? Sue a family that arrived in a dog's car? It's a bold move, and it totally backfires. Doug's dad, it turns out, was pulling the strings all along, making the Griffins do all this ridiculous stuff for his amusement. Doug, who's been a pawn in all the mess, finally snaps and calls his dad out. It's a pretty satisfying moment, seeing the tables turn and Doug realize he's been manipulated by his own father. It's a reminder that sometimes the most messed up characters are the ones you least expect. Let's talk about Chris. He's a pretty central figure in the Treehouse subplot. He's the one who's constantly trying to do the right thing, or at least the least wrong thing, in the face of his family's chaos. He's the one who's genuinely curious about Mr. Herbert, their creepy mutual friend. And that scene where he talks about Mr. Herbert taking him to the park and ice cream, it's so innocent and yet so unsettling given how we know Mr. Herbert. It's classic Chris, oblivious, a little slow, but ultimately harmless. The fact that he sees Mr. Herbert as a normal friend, someone who takes him to the park, highlights his childlike innocence. It also makes you wonder about the extent of Mr. Herbert's depravity if he's managing to charm a Griffin. The interaction with Doug's dad also shows Chris's willingness to go along with things, even when they're clearly ridiculous. He's the dutiful son, the one who actually tries to fulfill the demands, even if it means enduring a bit of humiliation. Then there's Peter. He's the instigator of most of the trouble, and he's also the one who tries to get out of it in the most ridiculous ways. His reaction to Lois being blind is, predictably, selfish and self-centered. He's more concerned with how it affects him than with her well-being. The helium incident is a perfect example of Peter's immaturity and his inability to handle any kind of serious situation without making it about himself.
His reaction to the treehouse demands is also classic Peter. He procrastinates, he complains, and he eventually tries to push back when he feels he's being taken advantage of. He's a character who's driven by impulse and a desire for immediate gratification, and this episode provides plenty of opportunities for him to indulge those tendencies. His arc, such as it is about him navigating the consequences of his actions, usually by doubling down on his bad behavior or finding a loophole. Lois, as the central figure of this episode, undergoes the most significant change, albeit a temporary one. Her blindness, while a genuine physical ailment, becomes a platform for her ambition. The shift from despair to opportunistic entrepreneur is a dark commentary on societal pressures and the way people can adapt or exploit their circumstances. Her blindness, her vulnerability, is transformed into a marketable brand. She becomes a symbol of resilience, but it's a resilience that's built on a lie. The episode doesn't shy away from showing the ugly side of this transformation, as Lois becomes increasingly focused on profit and fame, neglecting the underlying meaning of her experience. She goes from being a victim to a shrewd businesswoman, a transition that's both fascinating and deeply unsettling. Her character arc here is a twisted take on the overcoming adversity narrative, showing how the pursuit of success can corrupt even the most well-intentioned individuals. Meg, bless her heart, is still Meg. She's the perpetual outsider, the one nobody notices or cares about. Her role in this episode is to highlight the contrast between Lois's manufactured success and her own genuine struggles. She feels unseen and worthless, and her attempts to connect with Lois are met with indifference or manipulation. Her own ventures, like posting empowerment videos on YouTube, are framed as pathetic attempts to gain attention, while Lois's similar efforts are celebrated as groundbreaking. It's a cruel irony that defines Meg's character, and this episode leans into it heavily. She's the emotional anchor to the audience, the one who represents the real, unglamorous struggles of life, while the rest of the family operates in a realm of absurd fantasy. Her presence serves as a constant reminder of the show's cynical outlook on hope and personal growth. Stewie and Brian are largely absent from the main plot here, which is a bit of a shame. Their typical observational humor and dynamic commentary on the absurdity of the Griffin family are missing.
However, in a brief moment at the beginning, Stewie is being dropped off at school, and there's a quick exchange with Janet, the teacher. This exchange hints at the ongoing absurdity of Quahog life, with Janet thanking Lois for her apology email to the class. It's a fleeting glimpse into the Griffins' usual chaotic interactions with the outside world, but it doesn't really contribute to the main narrative. Their absence, while understandable given the focus on Lois's story, does leave a bit of a void. We miss their sharp insights and their role as the relatively rational observers of the family's madness. Now for the real hidden gems. You probably didn't even notice the subtle jab at the Sackler family. Remember that lollipop Lois gets after the Tom York video? The one that says, "Sowie"? That's a direct reference to the Sackler family, notorious for their role in the opioid crisis. It's a dark, almost subliminal joke, and it's incredibly typical of Family Guy's brand of biting social commentary. They can weave in these references that most people will miss, but for those who catch them, it adds another layer of depth to the show's cynicism. It's a blink-and-you'll-miss-it moment, but it speaks volumes about the show's willingness to tackle controversial subjects, even through the most fleeting of jokes. And then there's the whole far-sighted diagnosis. It's not a real medical term, of course. It's a play on words, a gag that allows the writers to justify Lois's decision to get LASIK. But the implication that you can be diagnosed with a vague, made-up condition based on your opinion of a cow in a lab coat is peak Family Guy's satirical take on the medical industry and self-diagnosis culture. It's a way to move the plot forward with maximum absurdity. The scene where Doug's mom delivers the line is so deadpan, so serious, that it makes the ridiculousness even funnier. It's the kind of joke that requires you to just go with it, to accept the bizarre logic of the Family Guy universe. The Tom York cameo, while seemingly random, is actually a really smart piece of casting and writing. They tap into his famously reclusive and enigmatic persona to make his appearance even more impactful. He's not just a celebrity cameo, he's Tom York being Tom York in the context of Family Guy. His comparison of LASIK to the veganism of elective surgery is a perfect example of that. It's a philosophical, slightly pretentious observation that fits his public image, and it's hilarious when juxtaposed with the mundane, practical world of eye surgery. The fact that they even had him participate in a bit about guessing which eye he's blind in adds another layer of meta humor. It's a testament to the show's ability to attract unexpected talent and then use them in ways that are both surprising and remarkably fitting. The Blind Flicks parody is another masterclass in satire. They're not just making fun of streaming services, they're making fun of the content that these services produce, the way they chase demographic appeal, and the increasingly bizarre premises that get greenlit. The specific example of Chris Evans and Vanessa Hudgens having racially nuanced babies is a pointed jab at the sometimes heavy-handed attempts at diversity and social commentary in modern media. It's the kind of joke that's so specific, it's bound to hit a nerve with anyone who's spent too much time scrolling through endless content. The sheer audacity of the premise and the explicit nature of the show within the parody really drives home the point about how far content creators will go for attention and clicks. The Eminem parody, Eminemina, is another prime example of the show's willingness to push boundaries and embrace the gross-out humor. The idea of a colonic partnership with a rapper is inherently absurd, and the puns involving 8 Miles and Mom's Spaghetti are just the icing on the cake. It's a dark, visceral joke that perfectly encapsulates the commercialization of bodily functions and the desperate attempts to create viral marketing. The fact that they even bring up his transformation from Slim Clear to Slim Shady adds another layer of commentary on his evolving public image. This is the kind of joke that people will either love or hate, but there's no denying its memorability and its effectiveness in capturing the show's irreverent spirit. It's a bold choice that demonstrates the writer's commitment to going for the big, often uncomfortable laughs. Let's dive into the alternative universe of this episode. What if, instead of Lois capitalizing on her blindness with a business empire, she actually went through a genuine period of struggle and adaptation? Imagine a storyline where she has to learn to navigate the world anew, leaning on her family for support, and they actually step up to the plate for once. Peter could have learned to be more empathetic, Chris could have developed a genuine sense of responsibility, and Meg could have found a way to feel seen not by becoming an influencer, but by earning respect through her actions.
This would have been a more traditional, heartwarming narrative, but Family Guy isn't about heartwarming. It's about the uncomfortable truth, the dark humor, and the subversion of expectations. So while a more traditional approach might have been nicer, it wouldn't have been Family Guy. Or consider this. What if Doug's dad wasn't a manipulative jerk, but just a genuinely concerned parent trying to get some form of restitution for his son? Maybe the treehouse wasn't a demand, but a genuine offer of a shared activity to mend fences. Peter and the boys could have genuinely bonded with Doug over the construction, learning teamwork and responsibility in the process. This would have shifted the focus from cynical exploitation to a more optimistic, if still comedic, resolution. However, that's not the Family Guy way. The show thrives on the friction, the conflict, and the morally ambiguous actions of its characters. The current plot, as messed up as it is, allows for more comedic opportunities and a sharper critique of societal dynamics. The current direction, while morally questionable, is ultimately more aligned with the show's established tone and its penchant for satirizing human foibles. Another fork in the road. What if the LASIK surgery had been a success and Lois's vision was perfectly restored? Then the entire premise of her becoming blind and building a brand would be moot. The show would have to find a different way to get to the same thematic destination. Perhaps Lois, inspired by her brief scare, decides to pursue a passion project that she'd always put off, only to find that it's incredibly difficult and not at all profitable. This would have been a more grounded, realistic story about pursuing dreams and facing disappointment. But again, that's not what Family Guy is. They thrive on the extreme, the exaggerated, the outrageous. A simple success story wouldn't provide the fodder for the kind of sharp social commentary and dark humor that this episode delivers. The blindness, the brand, the eventual return to sight, it's all part of the elaborate setup that allows the show to skewer influencer culture, the commodification of struggle, and the cynical nature of fame. Finally, let's consider the ending. Lois regains her sight, but she continues to maintain the illusion of blindness to protect her brand. She's invited on a talk show, she partners with an Eminem parody for a colonic, and she's living the high life, all built on a lie. What if at the very end there was a moment where she was confronted with the reality of her deception?
Maybe Peter accidentally lets it slip, or maybe one of her fans sees her seeing. The ensuing fallout, the exposure of her lie, could have led to a hilarious implosion of her brand, a fittingly catastrophic end to her capitalist endeavor. However, Family Guy often prefers to end its episodes with the characters largely unchanged, continuing their flawed existence. Lois maintaining her lie, even with her sight restored, reinforces the show's cynical worldview. It's not about learning a lesson, it's about the character's inherent nature. And in this case, that nature is driven by ambition and a willingness to deceive for personal gain. It's a darker, more cynical ending, but it's also arguably more true to the spirit of the show. This episode gets a solid 7.4 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it's a damn good start to a season. What earns those points? The sheer audacity of the premise, the incisive satire of influencer culture and the commodification of struggle, and the perfectly landed celebrity cameo from Tom York. The dark humor and the willingness to push boundaries are also huge pluses. What loses it points? Some of the B-plot stuff, like the TREEHOUSE subplot, feels a little too much like filler, and the pacing can get a bit choppy in the middle. Plus, the ending, while thematically consistent, leaves you feeling a little hollow because the characters don't really grow or learn anything. Who is this episode for? This episode is for the die-hard Family Guy fans who appreciate the show at its most cynical and satirical. If you like your humor dark, your social commentary biting, and your celebrity cameos completely out of left field, you'll probably love this. If you're looking for a heartwarming story about overcoming adversity or a clean, morally uplifting narrative, you're going to want to skip this one. It's for viewers who can stomach the uncomfortable truths and the sometimes offensive jokes, and who understand that Family Guy's brilliance often lies in its willingness to hold a distorted mirror up to society. What would have pushed the score higher? If the ending had a more significant consequence for Lois's deception, or if the B-plot had been more tightly integrated with the main storyline, making the entire episode feel more cohesive. Imagine if the treehouse construction somehow played into Lois's blindness, or if Peter's actions directly impacted her ability to maintain her brand. That kind of cross-pollination of plots would have elevated the episode from good to great.
And so, we're back to Seth MacFarlane and his wonderfully twisted vision. He manages to take a simple medical procedure and turn it into a scathing indictment of fame, fortune, and the human capacity for exploitation. Just like with his audacious choices in other episodes, he's not afraid to swing for the fences, even if it means a few misses along the way. This episode, with its Tom York inclusion, its commentary on societal trends, and its outright absurdity, is a perfect example of the show at its most daring. And honestly, after watching Lois build an empire on a lie, you can't help but wonder what other insane ideas are already cooking in the Family Guy writers' room. It's a show that constantly reinvents its own brand of chaos, and this premiere is a prime example of that.